Hi, everybody, and welcome back to RHAP's coverage of the amazing Race 38. My name is Mike Bloom, and we are here to check in about continuing our journey through the Czech Republic as our teams head out for a bit of, I guess I'd say barley and a bit of straw as well. We are going agrarian with a little bit of hockey mixed in as we finish off not only our journey through the Czech Republic, but also our journey with the Turners. They could only bottom G. Otis for so long. We will talk about that third and final time. Of course, Mike Bloom here, feeling a little bit of some killer fatigue. Of course, we had a big event last night here in NYC. Special shout out to everyone who came out, and special shout out to everyone who approached myself and Jess Liese about our amazing race coverage. But we will appropriately, Jess, plow on through as we talk about this episode.
Yeah, Mike, I don't know about this outfit. It's I feel like I'm gonna grade it an EIEIO no.
Okay, listen, I'll level with that. Yeah, I can live with that. I think that's totally fine. It's passable, maybe, or is it like a D minus F?
Yeah, the hat is and you just have overalls. You're just like you just own them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Halloween's coming up. You gotta slap some stuff together occasionally. And again, we had a little bit of a long night, and we had a leg that. Listen, I can't say I'm gonna surprise everybody that I had hockey pads just waiting around in my closet. So sometimes you gotta make things work, Jess. As we saw over the course of this, maybe in lieu of the results that happened at the beginning of this leg, in honor of my birthday, which is only like 10 months away, you could have given me a costume.
Yeah, well, I feel like your tickle trunk doesn't need any help, Mike.
That is an amazing thing that's said out of context. Not as amazing as last week, though. So let's get into this leg, Jess. Episode 3 of the amazing Race 38, as we are making our way now to Ka Hora. And what I will say is that we experienced this a little bit in the COVID era of the Amazing Race, where for those who don't know, they went from country to country, not by having teams book their own travel, but putting them on the Amazing Plane, a chartered flight where they all flew together. And so to deal with departure times, they would often segment them in departure groups. So like the first 3 teams left together, and then half an hour later, the next 3 teams left together. The results that we got was unfortunately kind of an iteration of the rich get richer, where, hey, if you were out in the lead at the beginning of the leg, chances are you would stay in the lead. And we sort of got that over the course of this, Jess. It almost kind of seems like last week and this week was one big mega leg through the Czech Republic, as surprise, surprise, we're going to have a battle between the 2 teams at the bottom who were also battling it out at the bottom last week and the week before. Consistency, I think, Jessica Liese, is one of the core tenets of this season, which you don't often see on The Amazing Race.
Well, Mike, I would say yes and no. Because it's not I don't find it as grating as I normally would have. I'm entertained enough by what's going on the show itself that it's almost like I'm more invested in the journey than the outcome. And I think, yeah, we do have this sort of stratification of the teams, but I thought the middle teams really did well to bring themselves up out of the middle. It was just the fact that we have these 2 teams far behind, which was, we complain a lot about season 24. And that was the worst example of it, where you just had teams that were hours and hours behind, and there was no hope that they were going to catch up. I think, with the exception of the back 2 teams, everybody had a shot at least. And there was a big gap, but you saw some of the teams in the middle make up a lot of that time, to the point where if we have another incident of a 9 a.m. opening hours at something in the next leg, it'll be a flat playing field again.
All right, well, let's get into what I would say is the top story of this episode, which is the return of the driver's seat. This is something that you and I teased last episode,
Is
and
this the top story, Mike?
I
Is
mean,
this all we've got? The
again,
driver's seat?
listen, there was not a lot else in terms of like placement jumbling around. There were some fun tasks that we can certainly get into, but I mean, the reason why I want to focus on it is because Phil had teased prior to this season that due to the clientele that were involved in this particular season, there was going to be a hefty amount of strategy, perhaps from a quantity perspective, the most we've ever seen in the Amazing Race. And it was represented incredibly well with this driver's seat, where, again, the driver's seat was a very new concept, just got released last season, but a completely different approach, Jess, than what we saw in season 37, where Jonathan and Anna approached it in first place and just sort of made their assignments and then took on all the heat from it as a result. And here they made it almost a more democratic process where you sort of had a literal tribunal of these top 3 teams be able to spend a 2-hour period ruminating over, okay, what's the best decision for you to make? We're going to give this strategically to you. We're going to take on the most weight. And here's how we're going to actually divvy up every single team, as opposed to, again, the more impulsive aspects of Jonathan and Anna, which was like, oh shit, we have 5 minutes. Okay, you over here.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like being on a motorcycle versus being on one of those like group tandem bikes where everybody sits in a circle and pedals.
I'll bring those up to some of these racers, Jess.
Yeah. I'm aware. I think what I thought was most fascinating about this leg, and yeah, I will say there wasn't a tremendous amount of drama, but I think from a strategic perspective, what these groups are bringing to it is this ability to sort of take it apart and think about it in terms of not just what you are being told you have to do with the thing, but how can you leverage the thing to kind of distort the perception of what's going on. And this was giving Survivor heroes versus villains, where you had them decide, okay, we're going to put Nat and Steph in the driver's seat. They're going to divvy it up, and they're going to give the guys the heaviest crates. And then you see, I think it's Hannah rolls up to the task a little bit later, is like, oh, it's so nice that the girls are looking out for everybody. And, good for them for giving the guys the heavy stuff and really taking care of us girls. And it was like, that's not at all what was actually going on. And the ability to kind of create a gulf between perception and reality is something you see a lot on Survivor. You see it a ton on Big Brother. You almost never see it on The Amazing Race. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at somebody like Joseph, who is part of the big train wreck alliance, and the fact that he was in an alliance called the Leftovers that ran the first half of that season that the other side basically had no knowledge of. And so he has some firsthand experience with the idea of being able to work behind the scenes and, quote unquote, gun for one another to other people to kind of save face so that nobody's the wiser. Rabina and Christine were another team right at the mat that were like, we were so happy to see Natalie and Stephanie get first place and beat those boys and give them all the heavy things. And I didn't really think of that, maybe just because we saw these 3 teams continue to be grouped up to a certain extent for the majority of the leg. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that, like, this might be a really great move in the long term where if and when everybody catches up, this is not going to be a group that's really going to be on anybody's radar, despite the fact that I think on paper you'd be like, those 3 teams were with each other and only each other for the past 2 days. Should we be clocking something going on there?
Yeah, well, and I think you have a difference between, you have some of the teams that are thinking about it very strategically, and other teams are like, well, this is The Amazing Race. You can't strategize the same way. And we always said that over and over, you cannot strategize on The Amazing Race. And then I feel like these front 3 teams are just like, yeah, F it, we're going to do it anyway. And I think that's fun. I think it's really, really cool to see them doing something different with it. I don't want this to change the game forever, but I think you can look at it on the surface and say, well, you're just working with who's around you and it doesn't mean anything, but it very clearly does. And it's very clearly going to shape the course of the rest of the race in a very fun way. They even named the alliance. Mike, have we ever actually officially named an alliance before? I mean, we had the Mine 5, but that was kind of what we called it.
The backpack, I think, was an officially named alliance. That was actually the first really Amazing Race alliance back in season 10.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the backpack, I think I haven't really read up on how specifically like Amazing Race only fans have been receiving this episode. I'm very intrigued to see
Only
how they
fans.
respond. Yeah, how they responded to the specifically what happens like after the roadblock, right? The first one where you have Natalie and Stephanie writing out directions, circa 2001, printing off MapQuest before going somewhere and putting them on the windshields of Jess and Jag and of Joseph and Adam. Because again, I think something that was a bit controversial in season 32, for example, was this idea of like, you are purposely staying behind a bit to assist those that are behind you. And I don't begrudge the teams whatsoever. I did it in season 32. I certainly am not going to in season 38. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially considering that they were the only 3 teams that were around of like, yeah, keep on helping each other, you know? Because then not only will this hopefully pay off down the line in terms of you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but again, it helps everyone be able to move forward as a group and tries to lock out others from trying to get in the top tier, such as yourself. But I could see, on the other hand, how some people might feel, is this area that goes against sort of the spirit of the race?
Yeah, but there's no downside to what they're doing right now. I think at the point when it starts to affect the actual outcome, and not in terms of like who finishes where, I think everybody is pretty well aware that it doesn't matter where you finish up in the front as long as you're not last. And even when I talked to Matt and Megan today, they even said the same thing. They're like, we just wanted to not be last. And that's the number one thing you have to do on Amazing Race. So I think at this point, it's like, yeah, why not do that? Why not do that with everybody at every point? And I think when we get to the part where you're like shutting other teams out, that's when people get upset about it. But right now, I think it's fine.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
they were really overblowing this thing with the writing down the directions. I thought, like, okay, you think very highly of yourselves. Nobody else has ever done this in the history of ever. Whatever. You wrote down some directions. It's nice. It's good strategy. It's thoughtful. It's good looking out for your people that you're running the race with. But I had to question, why did they leave the directions on the back fender of the car?
Jess, I was waiting for that piece of paper to blow away. And
Yeah.
that Adam and Joseph, who are, I would guess, of this trio, the worst with directions, they would be the ones of all people to lose it and have to. I mean, certainly they will run to their own stuff to put them falling away, I should say, from the other two. But I thought this was going to be the nail in the coffin for that.
I have a question about this, actually, Mike, because this gets into some really murky, like, Amazing Race minutia. So the directions are left for them somewhere on the car.
Yes.
And like, they didn't even put a rock on top. They should have put a rock on top of it, but I digress.
They should put a beer bottle on top of it.
Yeah, no kidding. They got those.
They should have rolled it up and put it in a bottle.
Oh, a message in a bottle. It's very nice.
Loved it. I mean, listen, Joseph and Adam were sending out an SOS when they lost their car keys in the fields.
Oh, we'll get to that. We will get to that, Mike. My question to you is, say another team rocks up to the task before Adam and Joseph are done, and they walk by Adam and Joseph's car, and they see the directions sitting on the back bumper for reasons, and they look over like, why is there a note on their car? They look over and there's the directions. Can they take those directions?
I don't see why not. First off, Adam and Joseph have no knowledge that there were directions in the first place. Like, possession is not in 9/10 of the law, but what if you don't know the object is in your possession?
Yeah. And you're not supposed to mess with other teams' stuff, but it's not their stuff yet because they haven't taken possession of it.
Well, I would say, I think the rule is you're not allowed to mess with people's stuff when it is provided by production, right? We've seen in the past, like, oh, you move this prop for this team, and so we're penalizing you. If it's something that was created, like if somebody gave a gift to somebody on the race and somebody else took it, I don't think that's worth of a penalty, you know?
Yeah, well, you get dinged pretty hard if you move any of their personal effects. Like, we've seen, cab drivers taking bags out of a car. We've seen, like, in season 18,
cab drivers driving away with bags.
Yes, that too. You've seen in season 18 when they moved the bags at the hot spring, the Globetrotters got in trouble for that. But this is something like, this is not an actual thing that belongs to anybody at that point. They haven't taken, you could take those directions. It would be no different from like looking at somebody else's homework.
Well,
unethical, but legal, probably.
Exactly. And that's, again, I think sort of the modus operandi. And what I will say, going back to, I think, a really great point you made is I wonder if the attitude of Big Brother is a little bit of the as long as it's not me. I mean, again, I think Big Brother players certainly jockey for position and power in the house, but on a week to week basis, especially early on, for a lot of people, it is about, just trying to sort of work your way through the middle and avoid getting nominated. And this is sort of maybe it's a little bit apples to oranges, maybe, but this idea of you just don't want to be one of these 2 or 3 teams that are in last place. And as long as you're not, you're totally fine. We don't necessarily have those teams right now that are slobbering over the idea of getting first place in every single leg like we usually do on The Amazing Race. And I think there are certainly teams that have a competitive drive to them, but I wonder if some of it is, again, baked into the attitude from Big Brother, which is more so like, it's not if you're not first, you're last. It's more so like, hey, just avoid being in the back of the pack and you're going to have a good day.
And you also have teams that have had enough reality TV experience to understand what it means to be perceived as a threat. And you saw that coming into play a lot. You have these teams at the front that are so secure in their knowledge of what's going to happen, their ability to do well at anything, that they don't need to win first place in every leg. And you've seen teams in Amazing Race history that are just like so focused on, I'm going to win first place every leg. And they end up getting targeted and disliked by the other teams. But here you have Jag and Jazz are like, we don't want to win 3 in a row. We don't want that on our heads. We don't want to get U-turned because people think that they can't beat us. So why not let our allies have first place this leg? And I thought it was a
just they literally threw it to them, right?
Yeah,
like they threw the competition to one of their allies.
Yeah. And I think this is something I think people have done on Big Brother. Am I right?
Oh, 150%. Yes. It's the idea of getting blood on my hands. And granted, this is not like a Big Brother setting where if you're in first place, you're directly impacting. And maybe that's what the driver's seat is supposed to be, right? You are directly impacting the people beneath you. But it is also certainly like, I don't want to be targeted because it looks like I'm winning too much. So let me throw this competition.
Yeah, it's really something that people don't think about a lot on Amazing Race, comparatively speaking.
Well, let's get into some of these tasks. And we mentioned a missed opportunity to perhaps put a note in a beer bottle because there were myriad around them. Jess, as we get to our first roadblock of the leg, yes, sometimes new Amazing Race fans, there can be 2 roadblocks in a leg and no detour. So our first roadblock here is all about pouring some brewskis, something that you and I had many opportunities to indulge in about over the past 24 hours or so. But Jess, this is one of those fun, Amazing Race tasks that's a lot trickier than you might think, and B, leads to mass amounts of cathartic television watching people just get absolutely sprayed down by foam.
Oh, they knew what they were doing here. 100%.
Unlike the people actually pouring the beer, yes.
Yes. Well, I thought it was funny. I think they really know what cast they're working with here and what kind of skill sets people will bring to the table. Because when else would you be entirely guaranteed to have people that have worked as bartenders, but in a season with a lot of reality TV alumni?
That's very true. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that only a couple of them had at least explicit bartending experience, but like, look at freaking Stephanie putting on her chemist goggles for a second and using the term CO2 more times than any other season of The Amazing Race combined.
Yeah, I think Stephanie is emerging for me as an early favorite. Like, I think she's just hilarious. She's kind of got a dry sense of humor, and she's smart and capable. And I think we've talked about like what loved ones are really going to pop this season. I think she's definitely, for me, she's a contender for loved one that's going to end up kind of overshadowing. Like, I mean, Natalie is great, but Stephanie is the star of that team.
Let's talk a little bit about the technique behind this, because this is also something that we enjoy in The Amazing Race, where in a show that's all about go, 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 go as fast as you can, there are these tasks occasionally that pride those that are a little more slow and calm and patient and steady, or you can Matt Turner it. I'm not sure if he talked about this in your interview with you, Jess, but like he essentially said that by the end, he's like, listen, I don't know if they're going to direct me if it's all foam, but like if I just, jam the cap on there and try to get as least foam in there as possible, I don't care if it explodes on me. I don't care if there's more beer on me than there is in the bottle. As long as it's full and it's mostly not foam, I think it's okay. What do you think about that? Do you think there were, because I think we only really saw like a couple people actually get bottles declined the first time. Otherwise, it does seem like it was a relative pass for everybody.
Yeah, well, also, I think that guy was getting progressively more over it as the day went on.
Yeah,
Like,
that's something that we
yeah.
also see sometimes, specifically in dance tasks, is like,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of rubber banding where at a certain point, it's like, we know you're never going to get this to the specificity that we actually want, but like, we're done and we want to make things a little more competitive. So, oh my God, you did it. Congratulations.
Yeah, that task judge was great, by the way. He was very fun.
Brewmaster.
Yeah, the brewmaster. I liked that they didn't really know who the brewmaster was. You just gotta go off and just start asking random people.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a separate task, was also find the brewmaster. I mean, he didn't really have like, I don't know, I would imagine he'd have some sort of giant stein that had his name on it, like world's best brewmaster, and that would be an easy sort of calling card for him.
He wasn't wearing a jacket with beer all over it the way that you knew who owned the greenhouse because he had a jacket with flowers all over it.
I mean, his jacket might have had beer all over it by the end, considering how much that was flying everywhere.
Everybody had a jacket with beer all over it.
That's the thing, is that for people who don't know, the Amazing Race does not offer laundry service between legs. Teams are responsible for essentially washing and drying their own clothes in the sink overnight. And so, yeah, I mean, we talked before about how there was a 0 rest period essentially between legs 1 and 2. Hopefully they got a little bit of time between now and their next leg to just like wash the beer out of everybody's clothes, because otherwise they will stink to high heaven for the rest of the month.
Yeah, that's not going to be a good smell. Are you back to what you're saying about Matt being at the back of the pack and doing this task? I think also there's something to be said about if you're in last place and it's not looking good for you, they're just going to wave you through. They're going to like Mark and Bopper it up. And that there's no downside at that point to just like bashing your way through it as quickly and as slapdash as possible. Like just half-ass your way to the end of this task so you can get going and maybe have a chance to catch up, which I think they did at this point, up to the point where they got the wrong directions and go the wrong way for an hour and a half. I think they probably had a shot, but yeah, at that point, after that, it was like, there's no point.
Well, let's go from possibly a task you could half-ass to a task that an ass usually does. Let's go plowing here, Jess. Let's go to the fields. And look, tried and true, die-in-the-wool Amazing Race fans look at a yoke, they look at a plow, and an iconic moment, an instantly iconic moment comes to mind. And nothing can truly measure up to that. But this was quite fun as well. To be the cattle you wish to see in the world as miscellaneous route info. Again, love that we're getting more of these in this season. Essentially, you have a marked lane of loose soil. Just walk through it and dig up a clue. And I think what everyone sort of realized is that they were actually approaching it more vigorously than you may have thought. This is almost actually the opposite of like Alex in the Survivor 49 premiere, right? Where it's like, no, it actually was probably a couple of inches underground, and it's more so about finding the right area as opposed to just digging as deep as you can early on.
Yeah, and I think anybody that has seen this task both times that they've done it before would know this. Also, any team that made a joke about their partner being broken would have immediately become my favorite team of all time.
I know. We didn't get any, so maybe just a shout out to the team. Somebody mentioned on chat BCC, if you're listening to this, if anyone made a My Ox is Broken joke, please.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Big Brother adjacent. They did compete alongside racers in their second season.
That is true. But I feel like they would have, knowing how these teams prepared for the race, they watched a lot of seasons very quickly. They may not have caught how absolutely iconic this is in the annals of Amazing Race history. But yeah, we're going to take them to school on this one. you need to make an my ox is broken joke anytime you're doing anything in a field.
Yeah, again, I will not spoil the moment for anybody, but I will say one of the most legendary crash outs in Amazing Race history. Only maybe matched by the iconic Rachel Riley's The Amazing Race is supposed to be fun and good. In a different way, in a very different way.
We better get a crash out. These are Big Brother people. They know how to crash out, Mike.
Did you see Kat in the first episode?
I mean, yeah, but she was just crying. Like, people cry on Amazing Race all the time. I want somebody to completely lose their entire mind.
All right. Well, Jess, let's put that thought on ice. As we go to the ice rink, once again, we're visiting an ice rink every other episode at this point, as we are getting into our second roadblock here.
Ice rinks are the new funiculars.
Exactly. Who would have thought? Who wants to light the lamp? And Jess, it would not only be an Amazing Race 5-hole for Amazing Race Canada fans and teams, it also is a literal 5-hole, as these teams are tasked with padding up, getting on the ice, and shooting a hockey puck into a net against a standing goalie.
Yeah, and this is funny because they did do this exact roadblock in Amazing Race Canada, hence the origins of the 5-hole itself break down to the fake goalie. But you had to make 5 different goals in 5 different places in Canada, because in Canada, everybody can play hockey. And here it's like, we're just going to do one. You just got to make one, and it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be specifically in the 5-hole. Even though I will note that Natalie did get it into the 5-hole, and I was very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, unlike another, no, it
unlike a previous Natalie shooting
yeah, I was gonna say
5-hole.
It wasn't that Natalie in Amazing Race Canada 2 who couldn't get it in the 5-hole.
It was indeed. It was Natalie Spooner who could not get it into the 5-hole.
We officially found the Natalies on the exact opposite ends of the spectrum.
It's amazing to me, honestly. Like, this rhymes so well. They couldn't have scripted this.
I mean, talking about rhyming, I don't know, Jess, maybe my big brain theory is that they knew the NHL season was opening this week, and so they put episode 3 here and then just worked their way backwards as to how they were going to plot out their entire reality TV season.
You know, if this was Amazing Race Canada, they would have had a whole, like, sponsorship task around it with, like, logos slapped all over everything. I don't know that they necessarily planned it, but I think they knew it was about that time. So it made sense.
But otherwise, I think this was pretty run of the mill. You know, I think everyone was able to get it between 1 try and about 25 tries.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere, but even though the ones that took it again and again and again, we really got like the time-lapse montage. There really wasn't any sort of drama around, oh, is so-and-so going to pass so-and-so? It's more so, oh, look how long so-and-so is taking.
Yeah. Yeah, that was... There was no sense of like somebody is going to overtake somebody in this task because they're good at hockey. And this is a task you can do anywhere. I want to see more things that are specific to this area. And it's fine, whatever. I liked the jerseys. If they sold those jerseys, I would buy one, by the way.
I mean,
it would probably cost me $300 and I would still buy it.
I mean, for what it's worth, you would sort of do your own personalization, because I'm pretty sure those name tags were just kind of Velcroed onto the back.
I mean, that's how they work in the real world, I think. Unless you're at the high level. Like the minors, that's how they do it, right?
Well, Jess, let's start talking about our teams here. And we go from Jersey talk to Jersey girls. Let's start with our first place team this week. Happy belated birthday, Natalie. You got a hell of a gift. Not only a first place finish, but $2,500.
I mean, not bad. Not bad. I'm used to the summer of Amazing Race Canada where they blew their entire budget on prizes and they were giving everybody a trip and $10,000 every week. So it's great. Like, what a way to spend your birthday.
So Natalie and Stephanie, you know, looking through these first 3 legs, have kept going up, 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 5th, then 3rd, then 1st. Obviously, I think the team we're going to talk about next is much larger in the conversation of, okay, who are the front runners at this point? But should we be looking out for these two? Again, the lowest they've placed is 5th through 3 legs of the season.
I mean, I love them. They're running a really solid race. And I would not be surprised to see them in the finals.
Yeah, it feels like they're making very few mistakes. And again, they, I think, were able to benefit the most from the Trainwreck Alliance. But one of the reasons why Jess and Jag also wanted to repay them was because they also made the gesture of stopping and writing out the directions as well. So it's really interesting. Even an episode ago, they were sort of maligning the fact that Natalie hasn't played with anybody on this season. And, Stephanie's just a loved one. So they're not connected at all to anybody who's left. But like, again, sometimes it doesn't matter who you came in with, and it's more so who you're associating with right now. And this could pay off magnificently for them, where if they are falling behind at any point, it does seem like they're kind of locked in with at least two teams that could help them out.
Well, isn't Natalie kind of known as being a very social player?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I think all of these people are not strangers to knowing what you have to do to get ahead. And yeah, I could come in knowing a few people ahead of time, but you also know how to talk to people because this is why you were on Big Brother in the first place.
All right, well, let's talk about team number 2 this week. Fell one spot, but through their own volition. Jess and Jag. I mean, I don't know, Jess. Like, I cannot necessarily, and I do not want to call my shot here because, again, we have a long season ahead of us. But, like, have these guys really slipped up at anything besides the very first task of the season? Have they done anything wrong since the starting line? Because it really does seem like there is not a task that they haven't left in first place.
I really love how well they are doing. The only downside is that if they keep performing like this, it's going to be really freaking boring.
Yeah, I know. Listen, we experienced that a couple of seasons ago. It happens every once in a while, and I think to a certain extent, like other reality shows, you can also, on the one hand, appreciate the dominance of a team that's really, really skilled at every single thing the Amazing Race throws at you. Well, you can also bemoan the fact that maybe it's not a very competitive season of the Amazing Race. And for what it's worth, Jess and Jag have teams that are alongside them in the hunt, but like they explicitly have been labeled the navigators out of all of these teams, considering how much Chelsea was talking about the fact, right, of like, we're good at the task, we're just bad at navigation. It's that rarefied air of a team that's really good at the tasks and really good at navigation.
Yeah, and I want to point something else out that I have observed over the last couple of legs, Mike. I mean, we knew that Jag was really good at challenges. We knew he was a comp beast. We did not know that his brother was better than he was.
Yeah, Jag finally pulling his weight, being forced to do a roadblock only after his brother did one before him.
Yeah, like how many of these roadblocks has Chad's done, and he's just like rocked them.
And I mean, it could be like, interesting
because
it's something that we talked about with Derek and Claire, where they purposely had Claire front load all of the roadblocks with the expectation of, okay, it's going to be really physical in the back half and Derek can do them. And it turned out swimmingly for them, got them $1 million in the process. Maybe Jess and Jag are sort of trying to utilize the same philosophy too.
They could be, but he's so good at them. Like, we haven't seen him struggle. We haven't seen either one of them struggle with anything yet.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, you never know, right? Famous last words, Boston Rob and Amber in All Stars were on a very similar trajectory before it all came crashing down. So the second these two get into a mailroom, everybody look out because the fall is coming.
Yeah, let's hope they don't have to try to find letters from people that Jag played against in Big Brother.
Well, I guess the question I have, Jess, is what did you think about the move for them to ultimately step aside? I mean, they brought some strategic merit to it, right? Of like, we don't want to be labeled as one of the big frontrunners, but I don't know. To me, first, second with an express pass is only a minute difference from first with an express pass.
Yeah, they haven't done enough to take the target off their backs. I think the sentiment is correct, and I think the confidence is great, but I think they're not hiding anything. They're not covering up for themselves at all. Everybody still knows how good they are.
All right, well, let's move on here to Tucker and Eric. Quieter week for them by comparison. We did not see them have any touristy stops to get more ice cream and magnets. Really wish they would have just developed a magnet collection. They could have been their own memory task, Jess, in the final leg of like, we got to organize all these magnets in the order we got them on the race. But otherwise, they were, incredibly competent. I think, as you mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, this is one of those rare examples of them being able to pass somebody in the lead group just because even though Tucker took, 24 tries at the hockey, everything else they were pretty darn good at.
Yeah, this is a team, and of course, this is the team archetype that I always rail against, and then I end up loving them anyway. But this is a team that I think, if not for a couple of very early slips, they would be right in the conversation up there at the very top the entire time, because they're very competent at everything they have tried so far. And it's just the fact that they're not in that little tight group of 3 due to some transportation snafus. Otherwise, they'd be right up there. Like, I think they'd be fully in it. And you saw that this week. They really, even with a couple of stumbling blocks, they were able to push ahead, come back from like a 2-hour deficit and get into the podium. That's amazing.
Should we do some Amazing Race 101 here, Jess, briefly? Because I do want to talk about Tucker's reaction to finding out that Angela didn't make it. Because that's some of the fun elements that happens in modern day Amazing Race, is that, back in the day when the teams checked in for the pit stop, they had 12 hours to eat, sleep, and mingle with the other teams. Since there was an incident in season 13, they then barred that rule. So now everyone is individually sequestered. And I guess one of the benefits from it is that you get a little bit of a Survivor-esque Blank getting your first look at the new Blank tribe, where we get a live reaction from people sometimes as to, oh, so-and-so didn't make it. And so even just looking at the driver's seat, right, then that's how everyone was able to discern that Angela and Lexi didn't make it, considering that the vast majority of them are not going to see that back of the pack team for the entire day.
And in recent seasons, Mike, it's been a situation where usually they find out when they're in the airport going to the next place. But of course, we're not doing airports quite as much this season, so we won't get those iconic scenes. And we're not doing them on elimination legs either, so we're not going to get that iconic moment of everybody's hanging out in the airport waiting for their flight, and then they're like, oh, well, who haven't we seen? And then that team shows up and they're still in it and everybody's excited. We're not going to get that, but we do get this moment of them realizing, and of course, knowing their history in Big Brother and knowing like there was some minor beef. Also, this has been a surprisingly beef-free season so far, Mike. I was given to understand all these people hated each other and were going to be like doing them dirty, but this is like the most petty somebody's ever gotten.
It's a very beyond meal type of season so far.
Yes.
No beef. But I do think that part of that might be the fact that, again, things have been so stratified. Like maybe the second that teams will catch up with one another, maybe things will start to boil. And I think especially once we start invoking what the driver's pass was supposed to be, which is like opportunity to take jabs, not jags at one another, then maybe the claws will come out a bit. Let's talk about another set of brothers here. Joseph and Adam slip a little bit. I'm not talking about on the ice, Joseph. The big incident being, first they are a little bit slower with Adam pouring the beers. Shout out to him for persevering despite clocking that his blood sugar is low. But once they get to the plows, they end up losing their car keys, which, as they point out, was probably even a bigger needle in a haystack than the actual needle in a haystack task.
Yeah, but on the other hand, they would have had like 8 hours to find them. So I didn't think this carried quite as much suspense as it could have. Even down to the point where we have changed the messaging when they cut to commercial. Did you notice this, Mike?
No,
it used to be like their team would have a terrible disaster. Somebody would be crying and be like, I'm never going to finish this. What's going to happen to us? We're doomed. And then you cut to Phil. If you think you have what it takes to be on The Amazing Race, he didn't do that this week. You cut to Phil saying, you can take your loved one on a trip around the world and see the world and do exciting things. And like, that's not as much fun.
No.
Did they realize we're making fun of them? Because sometimes they realize we're making fun of them.
I think they're a little busy right now. That I don't know if they're calling audibles, in the studio, being like, we got to cut a new clip here. Phil, stand outside the Parthenon right now. We're filming something new.
I mean, we've been making fun of this for over a year at this point, Mike. If they were upset, they had some lead time on it. But I digress. I love these guys. Yeah. They have such a great bond, and they just seem like genuine, nice dudes. And they're also, they're not infallible. They're doing these, like, every week they do something else that kind of they have to bounce back from, which makes them entertaining. They're not just quietly competent like certain other brother teams that we have seen. And they're getting a lot of personal story bump, Mike, and I'm thinking we keep seeing them up in the front, getting the personal story bumps. I think this is boding well for their chances in the long run.
You read my mind. I was just about to come in and talk about that because, yeah, I do feel like of our teams in the front of the pack, we probably know the most about them. We got a lot. Obviously, last episode was a lot about Adam's type 1 diagnosis. This episode was about, Joseph working out the family business. And as a result, him really wanting to put Adam in sports so that he could sort of have the extracurriculars that Joseph couldn't have. Yeah, just sort of pay attention to that, people. Not to say that there really is like an amazing race winners edit necessarily, but those are moments where you're like, we're finding out a lot about you. And maybe it's because you are inherently interesting people. And maybe it's because we shouldn't care about you because we're going to see you for a long time.
Yeah, it could go either way, but I think if you get one personal story bump and the team doesn't go home, and then you don't see him again for a leg or two, that doesn't mean anything, but getting it consistently like this, that says that we're leading up to something.
All right. Well, speaking of consistency, let's start getting into some of our teams that mimicked their placements from the last leg. They just love these numbers when it comes to the Czech Republic. Hannah and Simone, 5th place. I mean, I guess what we found out this week is that Simone has gone ice skating before.
Yeah. Well, and you saw, it was a quick moment. You saw Hannah trucking out her Czech again, which I hope this is a running thing. I hope in every country she's like learning huge chunks of the language, because I think that's a really fun thing that we don't see enough of. And it's kind of the way I would be running the race. I'd be like, okay, how many words of Czech can I get out while I'm here?
I did like as well. I will say the beer roadblock provided a lot of humor, not only from the consistent foam, but also the consistent lines foaming out of these people's mouths. We talked about this last time of like, these people know how to make good sound bites over sort of like mundane task repetition. And I loved Hannah, for example, being like pouring a beer for herself, being like, okay, and I've got it. That's what it is. You have to, nope, never mind. That is not what it is.
That was very funny.
It's that train of thought, train wreck of thought, if you will, that I really appreciated.
Yeah, she is very funny, but she's not like funny in a big way. It's another one of those like every so often she says a line and it's like the line of the episode.
And I'll talk about that as we slide into our next team here, Izzy and Paige. Izzy also had another really fun moment that I could tell was born out of like genuine frustration, but her looking at the beer, going full Krakatoa and going, why?
Man, I love Izzy. I honestly like I would say that was maybe Izzy being on Big Brother was the most invested I've ever been in Big Brother. It's like, I was watching it for Suri, and then it's like, here's somebody I very much relate to. Like, here is, a New Yorker and a nerd and a classical music stan with useless degrees. Like, Izzy is my people.
Yeah,
for sure.
And listen, those of us that were packed into the 900-seat theater last night for the live show got to see a very fun segment involving Izzy.
That was amazing.
Paige. Real ones
sad,
know,
though.
real ones know.
I'm sad, though, I did not get to speak to Izzy and Paige last night.
I'm
sure you did.
Yeah, there'll be more opportunities, I am sure. But I will say, we didn't hear much from them last night, both, maybe in the setting as well as on the race. Again, they were one of these teams that were doing consistently well. They even muse about it when they check in, right? Of like, nope, that's exactly what we were aiming for. Yes, we wanted 6th. Once again, thank you, Phil. Nailed it.
Hey, they understand. You just don't want to be last.
All right, let's get into team number 7 here. It was a real up and down. Oh, sorry. Yes, team number 7. Yeah, sorry. I switched these two around for whatever reason because I want to talk about Rubina and Christine because it was probably some of the most up and down stuff we got in this episode, where clearly, besides maybe Megan and Matt, they struggled the most with the directions. There was a point in time where Rubina clearly got very overwhelmed. And she, again, espoused something that I sort of talked about with Kat in the first episode, which is the pressure of, yes, some of these people who are reality TV veterans can withstand the feeling of guilt and it's all on you, your game rests in your hands. It's another thing when it's saying, yours and someone else's game is in your hands.
Yeah.
And Rubina even expresses that, right? As she pulls a full Muff and Missy and say, get in the back seat, let Christine drive. And she basically says, like, I don't know why I'm behaving this way. I think it's because the idea of me losing it for the both of us is making me lose it.
Yeah, but I loved the way that that Christine was able to just step in and support her.
Yeah.
It's such a good bond that the two of them have. And also, they're both hilarious. They are low-key, again, another team that you didn't think was going to be the funniest team, but I think they're funnier in a bigger way than, say, a Hannah or an Izzy, but very, very funny nonetheless.
Well, and we also have to talk about the delightful symmetry of the fact that Rubina and Tucker were dating at this time. And last time, you have Tucker and Eric showing up to the pit stop one task too early. And Christina and Rubina say, bet, I'm going to double that. We're going to show up at the pit stop 2 tasks too early.
Could this just be a runner? Could somebody show up to the pit stop early every single
Could someone just
episode?
go directly to the pit stop when they start the leg?
Yep, they rip the clue open and they're like, oh, pit stop.
I mean, we'll talk about a fast forward coming next week. It's essentially that, just illegally.
True.
But I was dying so hard. Just I thought we were gonna get an exact repeat of last week where they show up and they're like, the pit stop is here, and Phil's like, you're supposed to be on a farm right now. What's going on?
It's amazing.
But the wild thing is, it didn't change her placements. That's what speaks so much about the stratification of this leg, is that they went to an entire different location that they're supposed to go to later on, said, oopsie, went back, and did not change their placement whatsoever as a result.
Yeah, that is kind of a problem.
Just a smidge.
Kind of.
Well, now we could talk about Jack and Chelsea. Again, a little bit of fits and starts from the two of them. I mean, there was a little bit of a fit between the two of them, Jess, as we get a little bit of a revelation that we see with some amazing race teams. This is something that you and I talk a little bit about, especially when it came to the draft, of like, you need yin and yang. When you got 2 yins, that doesn't necessarily make for a great balance. And this is something that Jack and Chelsea both talk about here, specifically when it comes to navigation. It's one of these things where it's like, and Enzo and Jack talked about this as well in their exit press of like, well, I think I'm right. And so I want to make sure that we're following my lead. And when you're doing a tango, you can't have 2 leaders,
It's true. You've got to, again, you got to get out of get in the back seat and let him drive.
Yeah,
let her drive.
I did like that as well, that Jack was able to benefit from his experience of driving a fire truck for over a decade.
Yeah, this is starting to be one of those runners. We get this on Amazing Race almost every season of, production sitting behind the camera saying, okay, now I need you to relate this to what you do for a living. As an NFL player, sometimes we have to, as a firefighter, sometimes we have to drive things. And we do a lot of driving on the Amazing Race. And I feel like my experience driving the fire truck is like driving this little car in Europe. And it's always a stretch, but I feel like we can't have Amazing Race without it. That said, I thought Jack was great during the actual beer task.
Yes, for Amazing Race Die Hard, it was giving Gus in
It was giving Gus.
6,
but Gus got to drink the beer. Jack didn't get to drink any beer that I saw.
Yeah, I believe it was a detour in Germany, maybe, where one of the tasks was they had to deliver beers, and Gus distracted him and his daughter, another father-daughter team, by consistently drinking the beer as well.
Yeah, they were in a bar. I think they had to like deliver beer to tables. So there were like lots of beers lined up, and he's like, oh, they won't miss one.
Again, maybe Jack, if he watched more Amazing Race, he could have known to scrape a little bit off the top, and I'm not talking about the foam.
Yeah, I mean, they're not serving these beer. I don't know what they're doing with it. They're definitely not serving it. You could just like pound one and then refill it.
I don't know, Jess. I've been watching what some Big Brother alumni are selling on the internet as of late. I think if these Czech manufacturers put a crate on eBay and said as brewed and covered, slathered over former Big Brother contestants, like that could go for thousands of dollars depending on who the subject of choice is.
Yeah, speaking of Big Brother only fans.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start moving towards the back of the pack here as this, little engine that last train that got into the Czech Republic is just winnowing down. And here's a team that didn't really seem to see anybody for the majority of the leg. It is Kyland and Taylor, but we did get a little bit, Jess, about their relationship. Now, this is something we saw in the very beginning, right, when they talked about sort of their different forms of communication, and we get it more literalized, for lack of a better term, due to the fact that Kylan speaks about his ADHD diagnosis, his autism diagnosis, and the fact that he sees things very literally, which differs a bit when it comes to giving directions from Taylor's more flowing, symbolic method of speaking.
Yeah, she's kind of about the vibes, and he's about the hard facts. But I think it's worth noting ADHD on The Amazing Race can be a tremendous superpower.
Yeah,
Like,
just
if he
ask Ken
gets locked
Holderness.
in, I think you saw this on Big Brother as well. He gets locked in, and he can be really, really good at that kind of stuff.
Right. Just as long as we don't run into a mail rail situation where he becomes so fixated on something. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a really interesting moment to, again, get some introspection about their relationship. That it was what? It was like Taylor saying, oh, take a left at the gas station. And Kylan's like, I don't see a gas station somewhere, you know? So
Yeah.
again, we don't use The Amazing Race to diagnose and take a deep look into people's dynamics, but you could see a little bit about what they were speaking about in this episode.
Yeah, I thought this was a weird time to put this in though, Mike, because it had no
Yeah.
bearing on anything else that happened. Why are we seeing this personal story bump, Mike? Tell me this.
I mean, it's another thing where like they're kind of a big question mark at this point, right? Because I think after they won the first task, I think people were like, okay, this was the only all Big Brother team. They have this unnatural advantage. Like they're gonna just slaughter the competition. And I love you both, but like it's kind of been the opposite, right? And
Yeah.
maybe granted, two of these legs have been because they were on the wrong train at the wrong time. And so they were just kind of forced into being fourth at last at best. But still, it has been a little interesting that we had that brief flash of, okay, you two are incredibly skilled. But then since then, they had a, not so great first leg. Transportation derailed them in the second leg. In the third leg, they were consistent, but did not necessarily rise in the rankings at all.
Yeah, I didn't see them really standing out. And wasn't this the team that got drafted first in our draft, Mike?
I believe so.
Didn't Taryn draft them?
Yeah,
Or
so it is interesting. I think that, I think that all of this needs to be taken in sort of a vacuum where, again, I think the results from this week were very much based on the results of last week, right? The fact that the only real flip-flopping of placements we've gotten was like Joseph and Adam and Tucker and Eric doing a do-si-do. Everyone else kind of stayed within their quote-unquote departure groups. I think if and when, hopefully next week, we get a moment where more teams are bunched up and there's more opportunities for some teams to surge ahead and some to fall to the back of the pack, we might see them be able to emerge again like they did in the beginning.
Yeah, I think the field is still pretty wide open, especially if we get an equalizer at any point.
Yeah, and you have to plow that field. Let's get into a team that is certainly hoping for that equalizer as they have become the new Turners. They are the ones that were able to scrape by, though again, it didn't seem necessarily close once they got to the field itself. It is Kat and Alex. This is another team, though, Jess, that we're finding out a lot about. Them having very different upbringings. Alex sort of going the more Joseph route of not investing in a lot of extracurriculars. Kat showcasing that she was very opposite. But again, this is a really fun dynamic. I think Alex is able to showcase his personality, unfortunately, through his own crash outs and just getting things wrong again and again and again. Kat did bring up an interesting notion here that when Alex starts, really getting worked up, then that kind of leads to a spiral where he keeps getting frustrated. Maybe something to pay attention to later on.
I think we've got our new bottom G. Odysseus, right, Mike?
Yeah. They're branded as such. So it's interesting. It's a little bit like a your next thing where it's like, okay, now it's your turn to see if you can stave everything off. And again, it's tough because even in an equalizer situation, I mean, I do think they've improved as racers, certainly since the first leg. But if they had the chance to catch up to the competition, do we feel like the racing skills are up to snuff compared to everybody else that would warrant them not kind of being marked as the next one to be eliminated?
I really want them to stick around, Mike, because I
Same.
want them. I feel like they're chaotic and I want chaos. And they are so much fun to watch. They really respond in a big way to everything. And they seem like they're in it to have fun. Like, I think in the same way that Matt and Megan were in it for the experience, and I like having that in the race. I don't think they have a shot in hell at winning, but
Right.
I would love to see them be scrappy and kind of stick around for a while longer. Do I think they can do it? Hard to say. If we stay this stratified, obviously, absolutely not. But they are just a joy to watch. I like their relationship. It feels
Yeah.
much more genuine than I think it's at least like top 50th percentile in terms of like globally what we've seen out of Amazing Race dating couples, not just on this season, but every season. Like, this seems like a couple that could go to the distance.
I agree. And I think, it's tough because we love variance on The Amazing Race. That's the fun about the concept of it, and arguably about Big Brother as well. The entire conceit of an HOH is that you never know which way the power will shift. And we hope for these moments where Kat and Alex will be able to catch up, not only for, our sakes from an entertainment perspective, but theirs, because, we don't want their narrative to be essentially, yeah, we were backed into a corner from the very beginning and we just fought and fought and fought until we couldn't fight anymore.
Yeah, but that's a better story than we were backed into the corner from the very beginning and then we stayed in the corner.
On that note, let's corner our eliminated team here, the Turners. I mean, it's so interesting getting to speak with them, Jess, which of course you did, I did over on Parade, because this was a team that clearly was trying to improve every leg. I mean, again, they were the ones that were probably most caught flat-footed by the reality of the race hitting them very early on, but for what it's worth, it seemed like they were running the best leg they had so far. I mean, I think Matt going through those beers was the quickest they had done any of these tasks, but it came down to the thing that put them in the back of the pack in the very first place was no, navigation, I guess, but I don't know, Jess, I don't know if they told you this. I was told that they were given technically correct directions, just not to the place where they were supposed to go to.
Yeah, he said he said they were being sent to IKEA.
Yeah. Which, listen, who among us? Very relatable for the newlyweds to be sent to IKEA, go get some basic furniture. We've been to IKEA in previous Amazing Race seasons. But yeah, I mean, this was something that, despite the fact that they finished pretty soon after Alex, and it seemed like from when it was edited, Matt even beat Alex to the punch when it came to actually finishing the beers. Once they were out of it, they ran out of other teams that had made worse mistakes. And it was just a rarity, very rarefied air in the Amazing Race. We've seen it a couple times as of late, but
we've seen it more often lately, I feel.
But it usually is not seen that they yada yada the rest of the leg. Sometimes they yada yada the rest of the leg where it's like the team does this task and this task, but they're so far behind, but we're going to let them finish it out. Sometimes it's like, listen, we got to make a flight tomorrow. Let's literally make hay while the sun shines, and we're going to come out to the middle of the leg and just eliminate you on the spot.
I feel like there was a stretch, like I would say in the mid-20s, when they were really not letting anybody lollygag whatsoever. It was like the team in the back, Phil's just going to go get them no matter what.
I mean, most famously, arguably maybe the team that killed the booking your own airline travel, Chester and Ephraim, in season 23. Phil literally went to the airport to eliminate them because their flight was so late.
Yes, there was that. There was also in Rio de Janeiro, I think it was the TMZ girls were doing a puzzle, and they didn't even seem like they were that far behind, but Phil's just like, I feel like going to the beach. I'll just go eliminate them now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen a lot more of it, I think, especially now that like the schedule is tighter, the connections are tighter, they have flights to catch instead of being able to just like mosey on over to the airport and book their transportation. I mean, here we're self-driving, who even knows, but yeah, the field elimination in this case seemed like it was sadly extremely necessary.
I mean, I don't know, because think about this domino, Jess. We closed the episode rather humorously on paper with the wide drone shot of, the Turners walking romantically through the fields of the Czech Republic, and then Megan face plants. Apparently, that broke her rib.
Oh, God.
And she was bedridden for weeks after that.
That's rough. That's awful.
She
did not mention this to me. That's terrible.
Yeah, so it was not just an injury for comical purposes. So, I mean, I guess better than they didn't continue in the race. Because, like, imagine if that happened. I mean, listen, we've had cases in the past where someone tore their ACL getting to the mat and, like, tried to hobble their way through the rest of the race. So,
yeah. Well, last night when we had to guess Survivor medevacs,
yeah,
I was gonna, if I ran out of names, I was just gonna say Dave O'Leary.
And the four of us in the audience, Jess, would have loved it. So yeah, Megan's
Oh,
doing.
P.S. Rob is glad he's not here because I think I need to address something that happened last night at the live show.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Let's address some grievances here.
Yeah, I need to air a grievance with Mr. Cesternino. So, it's no wonder he ducked the exit interview and ducked our podcast, Mike. He gets up on stage after the episode has aired. Well, but right before the episode is aired, actually.
Right.
Survivor's about to start. He gets up on stage and introduces, like, does his spiel. Like, hey, welcome. Is this your first show? Like, we're so excited. And, we're going to watch the episode together. It's going to be so much fun. And then after the episode, and he pauses, and then he says, after the episode, we're going to watch The Amazing Race. And like 10 people in the audience didn't know how to respond to that. And they sort of pretended to be excited about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. We're going to do the live show that you all paid money to come see. And I'm like, come on, Rob. Why do you need to dunk on The Amazing Race? You know it doesn't do Survivor numbers. You know that's not what people are here for. Why, man? Like, why you got to be like that, Rob?
Rob, you have 1 week to respond. Come back here and respond to us to your face.
I mean, he's the one who insisted he come back this season. He wants to be here. He likes The Amazing Race. He knows it is fun and good. And yet, you got to get up on stage and like make fun of it to your listeners. I don't know, man. I took offense, man.
Jess, any other grievances or otherwise you have to air about this week of The Amazing Race before we tease a little bit of apparently what's to come next week?
I mean, I think, yeah, we did not have a lot of suspense this leg. We did not have a lot of we didn't have a lot of switching up of the places, which is what we say is a hallmark of a good leg of The Amazing Race. But the one upside of casting people that know how to be on television is that they will make up for it. We've had so many interesting moments of strategy. We've had so many good character moments. This is a really strong cast because, they've already been vetted. We know they're okay. And we're getting surprises, and we're getting like that town looked absolutely gorgeous. Like I've been to Prague. I've never been anywhere else in the Czech Republic. And now I need to go back. It was gorgeous. And
get a beer, play some hockey, plow a field. That's a beautiful way to spend a day.
Yeah, I mean, clearly
go to IKEA.
That's what you do. Yeah, I think I know. I can call up the Turners and find out how to get to IKEA.
And you also know probably the number for a good Czech hospital if anything happens.
For sure. There are so many different reasons to watch The Amazing Race, and if you're gonna be laser focused on the one that's like, I need to be surprised and delighted by who goes home, sometimes you're going to have a bad time, but you can also appreciate it for the journey. And if you're a person that likes the journey, I think this was a good journey episode.
Well, next week we will journey to another country. We are leaving the Czech Republic and we are going, Jess, to Budapest.
Hungary.
I mean, but speaking of season 6, that is the site of Jess's favorite episode in Amazing Race history. We can certainly get into the history of it next week. But a couple things that got teased for us. Jess, it seems like we are going to the circus. Seems like we're going to be doing some acrobatics. But I spotted something very fun. Maybe not so fun for Tucker and Eric, considering that they are trying to solve a set of Rubik's Cubes in a certain amount of time, which I am so excited to talk about, Jess, because Rubik's Cubes are one of my son's passions in life.
Is your son a speed cuber, Mike?
He watches the crap out of them. He might want to one day, but I have been tasked with learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube, of which I can say I finally know how to. So I cannot wait to judge from my couch next week. But the reason why they are doing so is not just any task. It is for a fast forward.
That is a brilliant Fast forward, Mike. I'm so hyped for this. I mean, it's not going to be exciting to watch, but from a game design perspective, that is genius. I love it.
So
And
let's explain what a fast forward is for the uninitiated.
A fast forward is a task that allows a team to skip all other tasks and proceed directly to the pit stop.
So it'd be fun, actually, if Tucker and Eric got it, considering they took it directly to the pit stop earlier. But yeah, essentially, depending on when this is, when they complete it, they just go directly there. It's basically like, it's happened a few times where you don't get a guaranteed first place, but it's essentially a guaranteed first place. Sometimes the tasks vary. They've gone from having them every single leg and you can only use it once per race to like, there's going to be 2 to 3, but they're still intense tasks like shaving your head to like, last season was go scuba diving and find something.
Well, the problem with the fast forward in recent seasons is it just becomes a reward for whoever gets there first, gets to be even more in first place than they already were. But something like solving a Rubik's Cube, Mike, that could be a game changer because that is not something that you are guaranteed to be able to do. So yeah. I love this. I love this for them.
All right, so we shall see what is to come in Budapest next week here on The Amazing Race. Hopefully, we will be joined by Rob. In the meantime, Jess, what would you like to plug? How was your interview with the Turners?
They are such sweet, genuine, wonderful people. I just had a blast talking to them, and I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to catch up with them today. That should be in your feeds already. And that's about all I've got going on right now. If you missed it, I was on Silent Podcasts International last week talking about Amazing Race Australia. That is also a very fun season, so that's worth checking out anywhere you get your podcasts. And that's about it for me. What's going on with you?
A lot of Survivor talk. Big night for hockey, Jess, on Wednesday night, considering what went down with a former hockey player on Survivor. Of course, given a lot of the circumstances behind that, you know that I had a lot of information about what happened there. General exit press. We're going to be doing a B&B a little bit late this week due to some things going on this weekend, but hopefully it'll be worth the wait. But otherwise, you can check out everything I'm doing on Parade. My own interview with the Turners should be up fairly soon after this podcast drops in your feed. Find out more about Megan breaking her rib on her way out of the race, which is just wild to me, but I totally agree. They are such a lovely couple. I mean, again, their sort of approach to the race is so oppositional of a lot of teams that we are used to, but like it works for them to a certain extent. This is something where you can really get a sense of like that they do really fill each other's holes in a manner of speaking, and that they, you know,
Michael,
honestly, I'm not gonna get that far, but that they have qualities that can sort of lift one up while the other is falling. Maybe not literally in the case of Megan, but it was a really nice conversation between the two of them. If you want a little bit more perspective as to, especially like this race, not necessarily changing their relationship, but changing Matt's life in a very unique way, feel free to check all of that out. But that's going to do it for this week on The Amazing Race. I guess one final word I will say, I said at the very beginning, but behalf of Jess and myself, like, thanks to everyone who found us last night. Thanks for everyone who not only came out to witness a great live show, even if Rob didn't show The Amazing Race afterwards. But listen, like, we sometimes feel like we're just kind of blathering on these microphones to nobody in particular. And so it really does mean a lot when we have, whether it's through social media or especially in person, people approach us and say to Jess, why do you podcast with that madman in a costume every week? And, you know, I think it's especially considering that The Amazing Race, I think especially this fall, has gained a lot of eyes on it. You know, I think that we are incredibly appreciative of the appreciation, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, this was so fun last night, Mike. I think it's the closest I've ever felt to feeling like a celebrity, because I had so many people come up and talk Amazing Race with me, and just like so many smart, engaged people with good opinions that wanted to talk about things with me because my opinion matters to them. And that blows my mind every time. And you all are such a great community, and we are so lucky to have you listening to us.
Yeah, and I will say, if you want to hear more from us, as well as some of the racers on this season, Chat BCC is your friend. These people are essentially like live posting the episodes as they happen. So if you want their reactions to things that other teams are doing, if you want a little bit of behind the scenes information about maybe what we didn't see, be sure to sign up. You will not regret it. Next week, we are going to Budapest. And we shall see how much of a complex puzzle this will be to solve, both the results of the leg and a Rubik's Cube, perhaps. Thank you all again so much for listening. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.